Welcome everyone to our first Industries Live of 2025. We have two excellent guests on today. We'll have Snowflake and DataArt that will be speaking with us, and I will be co-hosting today with Addie. And my name is Dr. Karen Hildebrand. I lead our partner solutions architects for several industries, including financial services, which will be what we're focusing on today. Addie.
Hey folks, I'm Adi Dubashi. I'm part of the financial services partner team, and we work with our partners to build industry-changing solutions. I've been with AWS for 6.5 years, and I've built these solutions across technology and consulting partners. I'm really excited about today because we're going to dive into data. And as part of these topics, I'm super excited to think about how our partners, technology and consulting partners, are helping our customers really transform their impact, going after those business use cases and solving line of business challenges. So I'm really excited to dive in today into two main topics, one with our partner Snowflake and two with DataArt, who's a integration and consulting partner, both who have specializations in financial services with AWS. To start with,
Addie, we're going to have a couple guests that are going to be joining us, right? So should we bring them on screen?
Absolutely. I'm super excited to have in our market development teams. These are specialists who meet with our customers and have a pulse and an understanding of the industry asks that our customers need. So getting that combined view of what's happening in the industry, how we're solving those challenges is going to be super exciting to discuss. So let's dive in. We're going to have Jimmy and Richard on. I've known Jimmy for a really long time, working across AWS and Snowflake. Jimmy has decades of experience in capital markets, banking, and really excited to have you on, Jimmy. Also, Richard, who's been an ex-CIO managing director at Barclays. Richard, thank you for joining us, and keen to have your insights as we dive in today on some of the trends and market asks that you're seeing across data. Jimmy, I'll pass it to you for a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you for that, Addie, and truly a pleasure to be with you, Richard, and Karen, and the team. Look forward to a reunion of many great minds and hopefully some value for the audience and what we're talking. So again, Jimmy McGeehan, I look after the banking, capital markets, and payments subverticals here at Snowflake. I've been here roughly 3 years, but my history goes back close to 30 years within the industry, working across some of the world's largest banks, UBS, HSBC, Wells Fargo, et cetera, hopefully experiencing firsthand both the good and bad that can come with some of the challenges around bringing together legacy technology to a business outcome, sometimes where it's harming the risk or the regulatory efforts of firms, or it's the idea of the challenge around actually producing effective outcomes for customers. But looking forward to the conversation today and talking with Richard, and love to kick it over to you.
Very good. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, we're really pleased to have you, and thanks, Addie and Karen. Richard Caven, as Addie said, an ex-banker with some dirt under my fingernails, if you like. I joined AWS nearly 7 years ago now from Barclays, where I was the COO of the global treasury function. And I spent a lot of time with my customers at AWS thinking about business needs and how do we work backwards from those requirements to find the right technology solutions and the right partners to deliver that business value. And because I've spent a long time in my career in and around treasury, finance, and risk functions, I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk about how we can start to solve some of the enduring challenges, I think, that the industry has faced as AWS and with Snowflake as well. So, Jimmy, we've got to get into the detail. It's all very well talking about ourselves. Let's spend some time really defining the challenge that we think our customers, banks in financial services, or finance functions in banks, I should say, face. What the trends we're seeing in the industry at the moment. We both spend a lot of time with our customers talking to them and understanding that. And then perhaps we can dive into a little bit more detail around some of the solutions that we are working together with to help those customers deliver that business value.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Richard. And let's start at the highest level, right? Let's talk about the industry challenges and some of the thematics in the industry that are exacerbating those challenges and how people are actually activating it. So you can't sit here today in 2025 without understanding the cost of capital. Interest rates are dramatically higher, right? So for anyone in a finance function, the cost of funding to run your business on a day-to-day basis is dramatically higher. Interest rates moved from next to nothing over the past 15 years to within a period of 18 months, a 40-year high in interest rates, and the speed and change of that was dramatic. we're also coming to a time of change. The only consistent post-pandemic is that consumer trends and how people are living is changing, right? All of that has created an uncertainty around existing business models and how to create true smart decision intelligence with agility to make better decisions, because the world truly has changed, both from a cost of capital and how people are consuming, and underlying economic drivers of activity are different. And I think that brings us back to the data. What feeds your decision intelligence, right? If you think about finance, it's all fed by payments data, revenue recognition, reconciliation processes. In traditionally legacy siloed technologies, the real challenge has become unifying that information into a source of truth that can be rectified. And if I'm a CFO or anyone within a line of business, I need to understand, where should I focus my time? Given all of this change and the growth of data, how do I harness that into a focused strategy for execution? And I think this is where finance is a great place to start, because if you think about finance data, as you well know, Richard, coming from your days at Barclays and the treasury function, the spine of any organization and the underlying blood flow that exists within it is its finance and revenue recognition. And then from there, helps you understand your risk, helps you understand your underlying cash predictability and funding needs, marketing, all of the offshoots of that finance data, how to transform, is really how keeping people it's helping our underlying banking customers service their customers better while maintaining a profitable focus. Because as all of these trends and the growth of this data has increased, it's created a tough decision intelligence of how to prioritize their business. So I've said a lot there.
Yeah.
Forward to this conversation. Go ahead,
Jimmy,
Karen.
I'm going to jump in there because it looks like we have a lot of live viewers that are joining us from all over the world. So welcome to everybody. We have Javier in Chile. We have Nadia, I believe, that is in Toronto. We have somebody from Angola, India. Are there any differences in trends that you'd like to mention around global footprint?
Yeah, I think from each country, obviously, first of all, from a data perspective, many times have really been focused on data sovereignty, right, and underlying control of the assets within their world, right? That's something I know that our friends here at AWS are dealing with on a daily basis. But I also think the individual rules, taxation that they have to deal with, both from a regulatory and a finance perspective, are uniquely differentiated. We just want to help break down those silos to help those customers understand that decision intelligence more quickly. But of course, the underlying rules and regulations, please understand and discuss with your local finance and accounting professionals.
Well done, because we have Sweden and Germany that are chiming in now. So great lawyerly response there. Well done, Jimmy. Back to you.
I think one of the things I think we have to kind of appreciate, right, is the cloud is just democratized access. We're talking about technological changes that were in the banking world used to be conversations over decades. We talk about systems that are running for 8 years, 10 years, 30 years. And what we're seeing is a possibility of just leapfrogging ahead. And so if we kind of think about that global lens, I think, we had the center of data organized at these large banks and institutions, but the air gap for a mid-tier bank or a disruptive fintech is significantly lower. They're able to start off really fast. They're able to move in a very nimble way. And that's because they're able to take off from the ready platforms and blueprints that are available for them to access. And so, one of the main things that we have to probably assess and dive into is how do we help accelerate these customers? And so if we kind of join that up between what's happening in the Asia Pacific region, where they're able to leapfrog and adopt partners like Snowflake on AWS, or, under the regional teams in EMEA who are having to kind of think really about data residency requirements and how they can comply with regulations, I think these best practices are really emerging. And what's happening is they're able to leverage off each other in financial services, because we kind of connect in the FS industry as one world. When you're solving it in Singapore and you see a best practice, that's going to very quickly get leapfrogged into Latin America, who says, look, I really like that pattern there. I'm going to use that for my industry. And Richard, you're really seeing this happen across a number of CIO conversations, but I wanted to pass it to you on what you're seeing on that lens.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. Yeah, I'm going to torture Jimmy's analogy of financial information being the blood that runs through the veins of banks, because of course he's absolutely right. I think to your point about some of the newer born in the cloud financial institutions that have been able to set themselves up using modern technology from day one, and dare I say it also from a blank sheet of paper, rather than inheriting 20, sometimes 30 years of incremental software development to deliver against objectives, which were never really in the mind of those that are building the systems in the first place. Regulation, changing in products and services, organizational structure, all add to the complication here. What we have are the arteries that blood flows through often being clogged. And that slows down information. It causes people to question information as well. And look, I remember back at my time at Barclays, it will be no different in any other financial institution. The accountants spending hours after work figuring out numbers, identifying data, sourcing it, preparing it for the processes that they needed to meet their internal and their external stakeholders. So let's be really explicit here, because those stakeholders are the most important. It's regulators, it's auditors, and it's senior management wanting to make really good decisions about the organization and where they place those resources. As Jimmy mentioned, if you've got a limited amount of capital, you want to make sure that you're putting the capital in the part of the organization that's going to generate the most return from that. And that's as true of leverage as it is of liquidity at the end of the day. So really trying to deliver that value more efficiently, more effectively is absolutely key. And if I go a little bit further, and this is the last time I promise to use the blood analogy, for those who are squeamish, I apologize doubly so. But if you can improve the nutrient quality of that data with more insight that allows you to make better informed data-driven decisions, then you're making even more progress. So more free-flowing data and more insightful data becomes a real key importance to that. Now, the issue is that those legacy systems and processes often rely upon an awful lot of manual processes. Because most of the time, the process is a bit manual because you're having to work around the infrastructure that you have in the first place. Because, I don't know, a new regulation like the Fundamental Review of a Trading Book, really great example, hit the industry a couple of years ago. The finance functions weren't designed and set up to deliver against that using the plumbing, using the veins. Sorry, I'm doing it again, so I wouldn't. You know what I mean? That the body corporate had. So we had a lot of success working with customers to actually build new reporting mechanisms that sourced data and allowed a finance function to meet that regulatory requirement in spite of, if you like, the technology that they were using at the time. And that's just an example, I think, of how the technology is finding new and better solutions to what are enduring problems.
And Richard, I think you gave us a great visual there. I think all our Industries Live covers healthcare and life sciences. So you just bridged from financial services and created a visual for healthcare and life sciences. So you're all good. And those that are joining us, please keep entering questions in the chat for Jimmy and Richard. Addie and I are monitoring that while Richard and Jimmy are chatting. So feel free to ask any questions there live.
So I'm just going to carry on for a little bit, because the issue with a really great analogy is everyone falls in love with the analogy and then forgets about the business needs and the problems. So I just want to say a couple of things here. So data quality is always an issue. Improving data processes so that they are more streamlined and require fewer accountants to work into the middle of the night just doing the manual basics have got to be a good thing. And then equipping those finance team professionals with analytical tools so that they can harness the value that data is what really modernization is all about. We're not sitting here talking about technology for its own sake. We're talking about it because of those business outcomes that are so important to an organization.
And Richard, I think you're calling out it's the analogy and how it connects back. And the reason we're kind of all going back to biological systems is just the complexity they bring. And again, in financial services, we represent equally complex systems. This is money flow. This is the ability to identify risk, all of it in real time. And so I appreciate the analogy because it does really kind of create that resonant complexity that I think we're all kind of seeing in financial services. I think one of the best ways for us to kind of make this real is, what have you seen as a real world example? And Jimmy, maybe we'll pass it to you first, but, a real story of how that played out, common challenges that a customer faces. What was their journey, and how was Snowflake kind of solving for that with AWS?
Yeah. I'm happy to dive right into that. So my story is going to come from a top 10 US bank who's really gone through this transformation. But before doing that, I want to set the context. So let's put ourselves in the mind of any bank globally, right? What are the three key things they're thinking about? 1, don't lose money. 2, don't get your name in the newspaper. And 3, if you forget anything, please reread 1 and 2. So let's set that as the framework of what we're thinking about here in the banking industry, to put yourself in the mind of your customer, because financial services predicated on physical data movement, lots of potential rooms for errors, concerns. The reality becomes that in a industry predicated on physical data movement from front, middle, and back office, how do you simplify that process to enhance your decision intelligence? So this top 10 US bank really realized that they were a growth by acquisition bank, as many in the US and many globally are, right? There's going to be huge amounts of banking consolidation. How do you stay competitive while rationalizing legacy technology over 10, 20, 30, 50 years between these organizations? How do you consolidate? So they realized they had to consolidate systems of record. And their mission was to, at this top 10 US bank, who was absolutely built on AWS, was to say, now that I've landed my data in the cloud, how do I bring together the freshness of that finance function to understand the lifetime value of my customers, to prioritize my strategy and execute upon it? So what we wanted to help them do was, using Snowflake on top of AWS, was think about how do they streamline their revenue reporting? How do they then take that by line of business function and prioritize the most valuable clients, to then think about ad tech, martech optimization and personalized interactions? In the banking world, Rich is going to tell you better than anyone, banking has become extraordinarily digitized, but the reality becomes how are you connecting with your customers when they have so many other choices of open banking, choices of fintechs they can utilize, right? I have 4 children, ages 24 down to 16. They don't care what the brand of the bank says on the front of the marker. What they care about is the experience they get from the services provided, and in the interface they can get ease of access to data and information. So this top 10 US bank realized that fear factor. They want to rationalize and bring all of those finance systems of record to one place. They then wanted to help take that reference data, underlying ERP data, and then the unstructured data when they have their customers coming in, and bring it to one place so that they can have a better customer experience when someone wants a loan, while then prioritizing their revenue functions to understand their clients better, to give them targeted offers out the other side, and prioritize what they're doing from a business execution function. This has really offered them productivity and agility at scale to enhance a revenue and return on investment, which has direct line of auditability to technology modernization. So I said a lot of things there. Happy to kick it back to the team. This example is something that's been a shining light, where I think many other both regional and large GSIBs are having to think about managing their risk more effectively, back to my original analogy of the top 3 things. But how are you then creating a personalized connection, leveraging revenue and consumption data back to your customers?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you talked a lot about unifying all of that siloed data and what the value and the benefit is. Can you talk a little bit about, as you see that value come to realization, like what's the timeline that we're talking about here? What can people be expecting when they're going into this consolidation of siloed information and actually realizing that benefit?
Yeah, this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. There's no light switch that can be flipped. However, it's aligning a very well effective and functioning data strategy to an execution strategy. And this is where it's going to dovetail nicely with DataArt and other GSI partners and other SI partners we work with, is how do you deliver this? And I think it's really then creating the roadmap of thinking about which part of the finance data you wish to transform first. Where's the biggest pain, right? Is it really about coming up with liquidity risk to understand your LCR reporting on a daily basis? Or is it actually then providing that personalized customer experience to understand how you hyper-personalize your marketing, as you're fearful of that sort of competitive edge sprawl to other either fintechs or other regional banks? I think it's that type of decisioning, and then having a staged function in conjunction with your partners, how to deliver on that not trying to swallow the elephant, just a huge lift and shift. Which pieces do you want to break down first to realize the execution and realization of value on that strategy?
And what you're touching on, Jimmy, is super important because, the nature of what you're looking to model and the risk you're looking to check would also be directly related to, well, where are you doing this modeling of risk? You may want to model your risk very close to the exchange. You may have certain data residency or regulatory resiliency requirements that require your data to be in a certain fashion, available in a certain way, very easily to key stakeholders. And so I think one of the main aspects of our partnership really kind of calls out to, hey, let's build to where your data is needed for the key stakeholders who need it, but also let's make sure that we're compliant around that data residency requirement or resiliency requirement by distributing the availability of that data and cataloging it for that ease. So it's something that we've really been architecting in financial services between Snowflake and AWS, just making it really easy for our customers to take off from that base technology architecture and say, look, here's where we can get you. Here's when our GSI or consulting partners come in and help you kind of, get that right for your exact need. And it's a certain set of steps, but it's way faster than it used to be, if I remember.
Yeah. And if I do want to kick this to Rich, and I think this analogy, there's a bank that comes out of the UK, one of the a very substantial one that was doing their liquidity risk reporting for LCR on top of AWS and Snowflake. They were able to collapse their infrastructure that was on-prem, something that was taking them 12 to 18 hours into 4 to 6 hours. They were able then to free up capital that was on reserve that was being held in collateral, not being able to use for loans or for net interest income. And you're able to do that while protecting the brand risk of the bank at a fraction of the cost of their on-prem system, that because you've modernized your infrastructure, now you have accurate information down to all of the cash flows of your business with a direct line of auditability to your modernization path. This is the type of work that's specifically on finance data, why it's so valuable.
So valuable. That those words alone. What I love about that example is that with that customer example, what we were delivering was business value, because that freed up liquidity has a cost associated with it, or a revenue generating opportunity with it, and you can calculate that. So oftentimes when you're trying to implement or drive modernization in a technology process, it's sometimes really hard to be able to see the output from that, and more importantly, be able to quantify it. And actually, with modern data architectures and technologies, we're beginning to get to the point where you absolutely can, and that changes really the decision making for senior executives, because they can say, if I'm going to spend this much on technology, I'm going to spend this much improving my data here, then I can set that against a real business value, a tangible business value at the end of the day. And that begins to sort of help the organization accelerate the changes that they're looking to make. But I want to say one thing, which was implied with what you said, Jimmy, and that is that the technology is not a silver bullet here, right? Because the processes still require organizations to clean up their data, to have a different and better, dare I say it, culture about data in their organizations, how they curate it, how they use it, how they manage it. They need to change the way that processes operate. So give you a really good example, and I know we're talking banking today, but we've got an insurance customer who's able to close their monthly books on the final day of the month. Now, that wasn't because the technology enabled them to do that, as much as they used the technology to change the processes which allowed them to do that. And that's people, and it's governance and control, and it's data, and it's all of those things. The point is that modern technology today, cloud-enabled technology, makes it easier for you to do this. And I think as commentators on this call, we could be guilty sometimes of saying to the industry, oh, no, you want to do it like this. This is how you should do it. Why haven't you done this before? The point is, these issues are often really well understood and known by the industry. The challenge is actually in delivery, in execution. And why I think cloud and our partners like Snowflake have the potential to make such a difference is because there's a change in the nature of the technology, so that financial institutions and banks are not trying to do the same thing to fix the same problems using the same tools and expecting a different outcome. I wish Einstein, whoever I think, who I'm stealing the quote from. That is insanity. Cloud, in the way that it is delivered, in the way that you can experiment, you can build, you can create secure, compliant architectures, test them, change them. If they don't work, close them down and create something new and something different, gives the business people in an organization the opportunity to work more closely hand in hand with the technologists to actually deliver on those business outcomes at the end of the day. And that, I think, is what's different. And that is what makes me excited, dare I say it, about the opportunity that we're talking about here today, because we're doing something, we're solving traditional problems with a new solution. And that's really, really powerful.
So I have a quick question that's come in from our chat here. So by the way, thank you to everybody who has indicated where you're coming from. We have some great guests. We have Uganda, Brazil, Morocco, pretty wide spectrum. So fantastic. Thanks for joining us on Industries Live. But one of the questions that came in from the UK was, tell us a little bit more about how Snowflake thinks about resiliency and disaster recovery, and particularly when you're thinking about that in the context of banking. Jimmy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's no question that every executive boardroom is thinking directly about this. Cloud has become critical infrastructure, right? And how you manage not only the governance control of your assets, but obviously the ability to have that response time and agility is essential. This is where we work with, obviously, we have our most native integrations with AWS, but we can work with other cloud providers if banks do need that, and if that's what customers are looking for. But I think it is the heaviest focused on our side across the governance and resilience side, because without having that availability of the data on demand from your customers, you cannot meet your customer retention and customer growth goals as you provision services across lending, treasury, other types of needs. So I think that is exactly where the focus has been for Snowflake on the resilience side.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable for all of us, I think, in that regard. Regulation is there now that's asking financial institutions to demonstrate they understand their critical processes and how they manage them in a range of different plausible outcomes. It's front and center to everything that we do.
All of our friends in Europe know DORA better than anyone. Digital Operational Resiliency Act. We are there hand in hand with our partners and our CSPs, especially with AWS in that light.
Absolutely. We do a lot of briefings on that. So
one of the important aspects to remember here is how we're able to actually help our customers and teams who want to build in this space as well. And so one of the things that our teams have done as part of the partnership has just made it really easy for our learners, our developers, our customers to kind of take off from, here's a best practice or a blueprint that you can apply. I'm thinking about last year where the Snowflake team and AWS worked really closely in setting up a plan to say, hey, we want to speak to customers across the North America region, and we're going to show them how we can help you deploy a compliant and resilient network for your data seamlessly. I think a lot of this content, again, gets digitized and published. So something we look forward to is making sure the group here and the audience here is able to get access to these blueprints. And so you're going to see more content coming out like this. But if you are looking at kind of starting off, you can access Snowflake on the AWS Marketplace, get started, and our teams are able to kind of give you some of those blueprints to take off from.
One I'd love to throw out there to the teams and for the group listening globally really fast is that data-centric AI. This is where the best of breed of both Snowflake and AWS come together. Richard talks specifically about data quality challenges. Using AWS's Data Wrangler and SageMaker, taking that machine learning capability, moving up the stack to get that higher level of decision intelligence, leave the undifferentiated heavy lifting to the experts, while then utilizing the tools to have high data quality, specifically using for finance where you can have that predictability of cash flows, to have your CFO office understand their own funding better, while then having understanding of your risk, regulatory, and customer marketing needs is essential.